Okay, we're up to part 2 of the Trump administration's accomplishments since coming to power in January of 2017. They've approved $670 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program. To date, they've processed over 5 million small business loans and they have saved 50 million American jobs. They have taken executive action to give a payroll tax holiday through the end of 2020 to provide an extra $400 a week in additional unemployment benefits, to empower HUD and HHS to extend the freeze on evictions and provide rental support, and to suspend payments on student loans and to extend the 0% interest rates. To vanquish COVID-19, the Trump administration has launched the greatest national mobilization since World War II. They took early action by implementing travel restrictions from China, Europe, and Iran. They developed the most advanced testing system on Earth, conducting 65 million tests. The United States is 5% of the world's population, but they conducted 25% of the world's testing. Through Operation Warp Speed, 3 vaccine candidates have now moved into phase 3 trials in record time. Recently, the Trump administration approved $1 billion for Johnson & Johnson to manufacture and distribute 100 million doses as soon as one is available. They reduced mortality by 85% since April through the use of therapies such as remdesivir, dexamethasone, and antibody treatments. The Trump administration has secured over 4.1 million doses of remdesivir, which is enough to treat over 650,000 patients. They've treated 86,000 Americans with convalescent plasma, which can reduce mortality by 50%. Just allow me to scroll down a little bit further, please. They have, the Trump administration has also overseen more than 230 clinical trials of potential treatments that are underway as we speak. They have worked with the private sector to coordinate the delivery of more than 196 million N95 respirators, 815 million surgical masks, 20 billion gloves, 34 million face shields, and 354 million gowns. The Trump administration has replenished, or they claim to have replenished, the long-neglected national stockpile by tripling the number of N95 masks on hand to over 45 million, tripling the number of gowns to 15 million, quadrupling the number of ventilators to 75,000. Through the Defense Production Act, they awarded contracts for 200,000 ventilators. No American who has needed a ventilator has been denied a ventilator. The Trump administration has delivered 700 rapid point-of-care testing devices and 300,000 tests to nursing homes. They've signed an executive order requiring federal agencies to purchase all essential medicines from American sources. They've taken bold action to reduce the price of prescription drugs for American patients. President Trump has signed an historic executive order requiring drug companies to charge Americans no more than they charge foreign countries. President Trump has also signed an executive order stopping middlemen from taking advantage of Medicare patients by charging higher prices to them and pocketing the discounts. $30 billion in discounts will now go straight to American patients. President Trump signed a directive lowering the price of insulin to just pennies a day. And if I can just scroll down again, we can continue with this. Over the next 2 weeks, President Trump says he will be taking action to require health insurance companies to cover all pre-existing conditions for all customers. The Trump administration is standing up for law and order. They claim to have reduced the number of murders in America's major cities by more than 10%. The nationwide violent crime rate has declined for 2 straight years. They've signed an executive order that is strong on policing, law and order, and ensuring the peace, dignity, and equality of all Americans. There are 156 total arrests since Operation Legend expanded to Kansas City and other cities including Chicago, Albuquerque, Cleveland, Detroit, Milwaukee, Memphis, St. Louis. They deployed law enforcement agents to save the courthouse in Portland from rioters, using the Veterans Memorial Preservation Act to protect national monuments. They're delivering fair and reciprocal trade to defend American jobs and expand exports. They signed a trade agreement with China while keeping many tariffs in place. They replaced NAFTA, a disaster, with the brand new US-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. They withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership in Trump's first week in office. They completely renegotiated a trade deal with South Korea, saving the United States auto industry. They signed a new deal with Japan to slash tariffs on $7 billion of US agricultural products. They imposed tariffs on foreign steel and aluminium to protect their national security. They reimposed a 10% tariff on Canadian aluminum producers, or as Australians say, aluminium producers. And the Trump administration also imposed a 50% tariff on foreign-made washing machines, saving Whirlpool jobs. They secured agreements with Europe, Argentina, and Brazil that support more exports of US agricultural products. They invested $2 trillion to completely rebuild the military, including $738 billion in just this year of 2020 alone. They've established the Space Force as the 6th branch of the US Armed Forces. They've destroyed the ISIS territorial caliphate in Syria and Iraq. Al-Baghdadi, Qasem Soleimani, Hamza bin Laden, and Qasim al-Rimi are all dead. They've secured $130 billion in new defense spending for NATO and $400 billion by 2024. They've withdrawn from the one-sided Iran deal and imposed the toughest sanctions ever. They've recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moved the US embassy there. They've taken historic action to recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. They've passed the largest package of tax cuts and reforms in American history. Since then, $1.4 trillion has poured back into the United States. 40 million American families are benefiting from their child tax credit. That's at $2,200 on average. They've designated nearly 9,000 opportunity zones in distressed communities. They've saved family farms from the death tax. Under the United States tax cuts of the Trump administration, small businesses can now deduct 20% of their business income. The Trump administration provided the first ever tax credit for employers who provide paid parental leave for employees earning $72,000 or less annually. And since then, the share of total wealth held by the bottom half of households has increased, while the share held by the top 1% has decreased. They have cut more job-killing regulations than any other administration. That is the end of part 2 of the Trump administration's accomplishments since coming to power in January 2017, as read by Lord Reags, the Lord Protector of Oz and Australia's Royal Colonial Boy with an interest in US politics.